Oh, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, and today this is going to be a preview episode on the New York Giants' potential general manager candidates. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying I don't know if the Giants are going to fire Joe Schoen. I honestly am not convinced that they will, despite his bad bye-week press conference, despite how bad this team has been. I'm still not convinced that they're actually going to fire him. But in the event that they do, we want you guys to be informed. We want you guys to be prepared. Who could the New York Giants potentially hire as the next general manager? So in today's episode, I'm just going to look at three out-of-house candidates that the Giants could consider for the GM job. It's going to be a quick episode, just some bullet points. Like I said, more of a preview. We are planning a more expansive and extensive look at some of these general manager candidates and many others in a future episode. But today, just want to give you the top three candidates on the market right now at the general manager position, according to the consensus, essentially. Who are the consensus top three candidates? These are the three guys that we're going to discuss. But I'm also going to give my take on two in-house candidates as well that the New York Giants could consider. Now, I know what you're thinking. In-house candidates, no, clean the house. That's my thought exactly. However, we know the Giants, we know how they operate, and we know that they like to hire people that they're familiar with. So we cannot completely rule out in-house candidates in the event that the Giants do fire general manager Joe Schoen. If they move on from Schoen, there is a non-zero chance that they promote from within. I know, sounds kind of crazy, but again, we're going to do our due diligence here, and we're going to acknowledge all of the potential candidates over the course of the next several weeks. And today, like I said, previewing three out-of-house candidates and two in-house candidates. We're going to start out of house, and we're going to talk about somebody in division, and that's going to be Alec Halib of the Philadelphia Eagles. This is an interesting name. He's considered a rising youngster. He's only 38 years old. Very young general manager, very forward-thinking general manager, but the assistant general manager currently, forward-thinking general manager candidate, but currently the assistant general manager of the Philadelphia Eagles, working closely with Howie Roseman. Now, we all know Howie. Howie Roseman is considered the best general manager in the NFL, if not the best general manager in American sports. That's how people view him. He constantly gets excellent value out of trades. He finds ways to steal prospects in the NFL draft, and he has a great track record of signing free agents that directly impact the team and contribute towards wins. The Eagles, for better or for worse in our perspective, have built an absolute juggernaut over the last several years. They have had a lot dealt their way in terms of coaching changes, coordinators leaving, but still somehow, some way, they bring in new talent, they bring in new coaches, and they build a contender year in and year out. Now, this year's Eagles team is not as good as last year's Eagles team, in my opinion, but last year's Eagles team, I mean, that team was ridiculous. They won the Super Bowl, of course, and the front four that they had in that pass rush for the Super Bowl against the Chiefs was truly incredible, and Howie Roseman deserves a lot of credit for building that, but so does Alec Halib. And Alec Halib has learned a lot from Howie Roseman. He's been working closely with Howie Roseman for years now. He's been the assistant general manager for 4 seasons. He's been with the Philadelphia Eagles for close to 2 decades now. So even though he's only 38 years old, this is his 16th season with the Philadelphia Eagles. He was an assistant, and then in 2022 became the assistant general manager. Prior to that, he was the vice president of football operations and strategy. Now, I think that's important to note because what's his background? Where does he come from? Is he a scout? He's an analytical guy who's driven on data. That's the perspective of Alec Halib. If you want a guy who's modern, cutting edge, looking forward and being progressive within the sport, Alec Halib is that guy. Howie Roseman, he's a scout. He can find the talent. But Alec Halib pairs with him to give him the data behind those players and those prospects. So he's a very analytic, savvy football mind. I know that might deter some Giants fans. You might say, well, I don't want analytics. I want somebody who can build a program, who can kind of bring in talent and scout talent. And Halib can do those things. Again, he's an assistant general manager for Howie Roseman. But what Howie Roseman does so well is extracts value. He finds value in specific trades. He finds value in specific signings and draft picks. The value finding variable, I think, comes from Alec Halib and his analytical mindset and his data-driven perspective of evaluating football talent. So we always talk about how the Eagles are a step ahead of everybody, how they're very forward-thinking and progressive. That's from their analytical background, their data-driven approach to building a football team, and that comes from Alec Halib. So if that tickles your fancy, if that's what you're into, a data-driven operation, Halib is a rising star in front offices right now. He's considered among the top general manager candidates, if not the top general manager candidate entering this offseason. So he would be quite a different approach to what the Giants have had really throughout their history. I'll give credit to Joe Schoen and say that he did modernize the Giants' approach. He did bring them closer to the modern age, although that's not saying much considering Dave Gettleman was operating like a dinosaur. But he has brought them more modern. He has brought them more data-driven, and he has brought them more into an analytical mindset. But if you want to take that another step forward, that would be Alec Halib. Now, let me give you guys, now that I've given you the background on him, kind of the factual approach to evaluating him, I'm going to give you my opinion. I'm not crazy about this approach for the New York Giants. I think having this organization lean more into analytics, it's not a bad thing, but Halib isn't exactly what I'm looking for from a general manager in the standpoint that he is a 38-year-old bookworm kind of guy. Like he's a computer data analytics guy. And what I think the New York Giants need is a general manager who institutes a culture, who brings in connections, who knows a guy here and a guy there that can set up a new discipline and accountability method and bring in a program. The Giants need a program builder at the general manager position. I do not think they have that currently with Joe Schoen. I think he's done a decent job building the roster, and that's one half of the job. But the other half of the general manager job is instituting a culture and building a program, and that's where I think Joe Schoen has largely failed. He let a lot of key leaders walk out of the building and out of the locker room, and he failed to bring in new leadership, and he really failed to understand the strengths and weaknesses of the roster. Maybe he was a little too analytically driven. I'm not sure, but at the end of the day, the Giants' next general manager, if there is going to be a next general manager this offseason, to me, should be a culture builder, a guy who can bring in not only talent and not only understand the analytics behind the talent, but bring in leaders, bring in a locker room presence. That's what I think we need from the next general manager. So as much as I think Alec Halib is an intriguing option, very modern approach to the game, not that I want the Giants to take an old school approach. I just want them to take a more focused on culture approach. Culture approach is what I want the New York Giants to take. So Halib, again, top candidate, top prospect for general manager jobs, just maybe not the best fit for what I think the New York Giants need, which is a program builder. However, I do think this next guy could be that for them. And that's going to be Ray Agnu of the Detroit Lions. He is the Lions assistant general manager. He has had that position for several years now. And prior to that, he's also been a player personnel executive. So he's a scout. He is a guy that evaluates talent. When you're looking at the Detroit Lions and the way that they've built that roster, man, have they found some talent in the drafts in recent years or what? A lot of that has been Ray Agnu. I remember the viral clip of the Detroit Lions drafting Jahmyr Gibbs. A lot of analysts called that a crazy selection, said that's way too high to take a running back, but Ray Agnu was one of the architects. I remember that viral clip of him being super pumped and excited. We just got Jahmyr Gibbs. We just got the next best running back in the NFL. If you remember that video of him in the war room, essentially just freaking out with Brad Holmes, the general manager of the Lions, Ray Agnu, an architect of finding the key specific talent pieces on this current iteration of the Detroit Lions, whether you're talking Amon-Ra St. Brown, whether you're talking Jahmyr Gibbs, that linebacker who just had a crazy game the other night. His name is slipping my mind. He's been with the team since 2021. He assists and consults Brad Holmes with all functions of player personnel. So that's talking NFL scouting for the pros and free agency. That's talking internal scouting, and that's also talking scouting of draft picks. So if you want a general manager who is player personnel driven, scout, find the talent, put it on the roster, I like Ray Agnu. But I also like Ray Agnu for the culture thing because the Giants, they have a wildly mismanaged culture. But when I think about the Detroit Lions, I think about a team that is all culture. That team has an identity. That team strives to uphold their identity every single snap. And that starts from above. That starts from the general manager's office, from that front office that features Brad Holmes, of course, but the assistant GM, Ray Agnu, he is a big part of instituting that culture within the Detroit Lions locker room and on their sidelines in the coaching staff, because we all know they go for it on fourth down. They are aggressive. They only bring in specific kinds of players who fit the cultural mold. They only bring in specific kinds of coaches who fit that cultural mold. And that's why I like Ray Agnu, because he's been a part of building that culture for the Detroit Lions and making sure that everybody who walks into that building and contributes to their program is a perfect fit for that program. That's why I like Ray Agnu, in addition, of course, to his ability to scout key talent. If you look at the Lions website, it says that Agnu continues to be a key asset in helping Holmes with roster construction and team building. His influence continues to be an integral in the roster construction and success of the club during his tenure. So again, I want a guy who brings in a new culture. I think Ray Agnu can be that guy. And I also want a guy who can find talent and extract it, whether that's from the free agency pool or whether that's from the draft. Ray Agnu, to me, number one general manager candidate when I look at the top guys on the board this offseason. Now, again, I got more research to do. There's more guys to discuss. There's more guys for me to take a closer look at. But on my early kind of preview here, I'm really leaning towards Ray Agnu over an Alec Halib, over some of these other guys. I just think that he's got an eye for talent, but he's also got an ability to implement a culture. So, Ray Agnu. Guys, if you are enjoying this episode, make sure to leave your thoughts down below in the comment section. Let me know who your favorite general manager candidate is, and let me know who you think the Giants should hire and what you're looking for in a general manager if the Giants do end up firing Joe Schoen. So do make sure to leave a like. It helps the channel tremendously. Now, we're also going to go into our third and final out-of-house candidate before briefly touching on two in-house candidates. But before we do, just a quick message from the sponsor of today's episode. Thank you to Manta for sponsoring this episode. That's where Manta Sleep comes into play. You take care of your skin during the day, so why let your sleep mask ruin it overnight? That's where Manta Sleep comes into play. The Manta Silk Mask pairs total darkness with pure comfort. Made with 100% silk where it touches your skin, it's soft, breathable, and ideal for sensitive skin or anyone who values luxury. The adjustable eye cups block all light and alleviate pressure on your eyes so you sleep deeper without irritation. The Manta Silk Mask is soft and breathable, helping you relax your way into a good night's sleep. I know I need some help relaxing on Sundays after watching another Giants loss. Whether you sleep on your back or on your side, the mask is secure and comfortable, kind of like the Giants' pockets have been this season. This mask is built with durable materials, so you can wear it every night, whether you're at home or on the go, or even on the couch after the Giants put you to sleep by halftime. Go check out the Manta Sleep website where you can find the Manta Silk Mask and the rest of their sleep masks and accessories. The Manta Silk Sleep Mask is a fully adjustable, ultra comfortable sleep mask that delivers 100% blackout and breathable side sleeper friendly design. It also has adjustable eye cups with zero pressure to give you a custom fit that stays in place and never presses on your eyes or lashes. So once again, go check out Manta Sleep and use my code FIRESIDE to unlock 10% of your purchase. That's code FIRESIDE for 10% off your purchase. Link is in the description below. So I hope you guys enjoyed that one. I tried to make it as fun and enjoyable as possible. Thank you once again to Manta Sleep for sponsoring this episode. Now back into these general manager candidates. Let's talk about Indianapolis Colts assistant general manager Ed Dodds. That's a familiar name if you're a fan of the NFL. This guy's been brought up in league circles for years now because he's been the assistant GM for the Colts since 2018. So he's held the number 2 position in that front office for 7 years now. Pretty impressive stuff. And he's helped rebuild once again that Indianapolis Colts roster, because if you think about when he took over as that assistant GM in 2018, what a different team the Indianapolis Colts were back in 2018 compared to where they are now in 2025. They built up a contender. They fell apart and they rebuilt themselves back into a contender. And I think that's really interesting. Ed Dodds having kind of his hand in that pot, trying to, evaluate a guy that could potentially turn the Giants around, give them a rebuild, a retooling, because I don't think they're all that far off. I think that the Giants do have talent. I think they need a guy to just make some tweaks, rebuild, add some additional talent, and, go ahead and kind of move into a new age in the future with the foundation that Joe Schoen already built for them. And Ed Dodds could potentially be that guy. So he's been working closely with the general manager of the Indianapolis Colts for 6 seasons now as their assistant general manager. And according to the Colts website, Dodds is deeply involved in the Colts personnel evaluation, draft planning, and free agency strategy, helping shape the Colts' long-term roster. So now that the Colts are top contenders, Dodds is a more popular name than ever for a potential general manager job. So he's got lengthy experience. I think that he could be a stabilizing energy for the New York Giants front office. And I do think he is going to be one of the top candidates if they do move on from Joe Schoen. Joe Schoen is, we'll see whether or not he keeps his job. But I think that one of the things that he maybe didn't achieve as well as he wanted to when he took over this job in 2022 was building for the long term. I think the Giants overachieved in 2022. They won a playoff game. They figured after that, I think we're a lot closer to being contenders than we initially thought. Now we're going to go all in on this win now window. And that wasn't the right idea for the Giants. They clearly overachieved in 2022. It came back to bite them in 2023 when they went all in, tried to win games, and didn't realize, hey, our roster actually isn't as good as it maybe looked in 2022. I think we benefited from some lucky breaks. I think we benefited from some great coaching talent in that season. Wink Martindale did a great job with that defense. It forced a whole bunch of turnovers. Giants made it into the playoffs, won a playoff game against a really suspect Vikings team, let's call it that. And then they just overachieved in that first season, and then they misevaluated in the offseason. Figured that they were close to winning. Let's just go all in. And that isn't what the Giants should have done. That's what we've learned now. The Giants didn't have a long-term, forward-thinking approach to that offseason. But that's where Ed Dodds comes in. He is in his role with the Colts is specifically there to think long-term, to bring in young talent that could be long-term building blocks. And I think that's an approach that the Giants would like to have their next general manager take. Again, Joe Schoen may be built for the immediate, built to win games as soon as possible. Maybe he didn't think about long-term, what's this move going to do to this position? How is that going to affect the leadership in the locker room in 3 seasons from now? How is that going to affect our depth at this position 4 seasons from now? But I think Ed Dodds, that's his background. That's his experience. And that's where I think he could be a valuable candidate for this job for the New York Giants. If you have a guy who's thinking long-term and taking that approach, it could be really beneficial. And that's why I think Ed Dodds is going to be a top candidate. So interested to hear your guys' thoughts on Ed Dodds, the assistant GM of the Indianapolis Colts. Once again, he's had a heavy hand to play in their free agent strategy, draft planning, and personnel evaluation. So a scouting mind there. Again, I still like Ray Agnu. I like his cultural ability, his ability to kind of bring in an identity with him. But Ed Dodds, I think, has got a really great background in building roster talent, which is also something I think the Giants can benefit from. So let's talk about those 2 in-house candidates briefly before we get out of here. Number 1 being Brandon Brown. Brandon Brown is a hot name in circles around the league. A lot of people view him as a rising general manager candidate. He's gone through courses and preparation programs to become a future general manager for an NFL franchise. And could that be with the New York Giants? Well, potentially, although I do think it's unlikely that they promote from within. But let's talk about why Brandon Brown could potentially be the next general manager of the Giants. Well, he's been their assistant GM since 2022. Prior to that, he was with the Philadelphia Eagles. He learned from Howie Roseman, similar to Alec Halib, who we discussed earlier. But Alec Halib has still been Howie Roseman's assistant GM. Meanwhile, Brandon Brown left from underneath the coattails of Howie Roseman and went and found some success elsewhere here with the New York Giants, because the hits and the misses of the Giants, they often get pinned on Joe Schoen, that's for sure. But the new process that he gets praised for is actually something that was helped and influenced and shaped by Brandon Brown. Brandon Brown brought a new process, and he is a scout long-term. He's had a progressive approach to the evaluation process, especially in the draft, but he also does pro personnel scouting as well. So if you think the Giants have had some good hits in the draft here and there, if you think that they are finding talent in the middle rounds like a Scadaboo, like a Tracy, and some of those other guys, a lot of that credit should go to Brandon Brown. He's not the one who's done a ton of free agency signings. He's not the one who's had a heavy hand to play in some of the salary cap management. He is basically the right-hand man for Joe Schoen. Excuse me. Bless you. Thank you. When it comes to scouting. So if you like his ability to scout, you're going to like Brandon Brown. The only thing is, I'm going to throw caution to the wind here. I don't think the Giants scouting has been all that great, particularly when it comes to free agency scouting. I don't think they've had great player personnel scouting, or pro personnel scouting rather. And that's where I think Brandon Brown has done most of his work with the New York Giants. So I think that he's been impressive when we've seen videos of him, whether that's in Hard Knocks or behind the scenes access with the New York Giants. Brandon Brown is very eloquent and he's smart. He's a highly intelligent front office executive. I do think he's got a bright future in this league. But personally, I think he has too similar a perspective to the way of building a roster to the one that Joe Schoen currently has. And I think that the Giants, again, need a fresh face, need some new blood, and need somebody who comes in here and says, new identity, new culture, let's build towards that. I don't think Brandon Brown would have that perspective. I think Brandon Brown would have the perspective of saying, we're close. Let's take a couple more steps forward. Let's keep building on what we've done, and let's keep this culture and identity in place. From what I understand, guys, the Giants culture, that locker room, it's all out of whack. There is disdain from the players up to the coaching staff, from the players up to the front office, from the coaching staff to the front office, from the front office downward as well. There just seems to be a lot of tension within this organization based on people I've spoken to and things that I know and things that I've seen from reporters as well. Everything is confirmed. There is a toxic culture in this locker room and in this front office right now for the New York Giants. The organization, to me, just needs an overhaul. And so that's why I don't think hiring from within, even though Brandon Brown is a very promising front office exec, he has a bright future and a lot of potential as a front office exec. And I think he will one day be a general manager. I just don't think he's going to be a good fit right now with what the New York Giants need. And that's, in my opinion, is a change. I don't think he brings enough change. Neither does the second general manager candidate that the Giants have in-house, and that is Kevin Abrams. No, please. No, I do not want Kevin Abrams to be the next general manager of the New York Giants. This would be a backwards move, in my opinion. Kevin Abrams has been with the Giants for 27 years now. That's right. He's coming up on 3 total decades. The Giants have been bad for at least one of those decades now. It's probably been 13 years since they've actually been a good football team. Kevin Abrams has been managing the cap for the New York Giants for at least 10 of those years. That is a red flag. I think when you have had as many cap issues as the Giants have had over the last decade, and you've only had one guy really managing that guy should be reevaluated. So I'm actually bringing up Kevin Abrams not to call him a legitimate general manager candidate for the Giants. Believe me, they probably view him as one. I'm saying we need a change here. We need a new voice in that position. We need somebody to redo the Giants' operations in terms of their management of the salary cap and all those other things. Right now, he is the senior vice president of football operations and strategy. So he's not doing the scouting. He's not kind of in that realm of bringing in the talent. But in terms of managing that talent, bringing in coaches and making those networking connections that we have all been very critical of, that's a role that Kevin Abrams plays. So at the very least, what I want the Giants to do this offseason, if they are keeping Joe Schoen, bring in some other fresh faces to the organization. Bring in a new senior vice president of football operation and strategy. The Giants need a new strategy. They need a new operation. They need a new program. That's why I think that Kevin Abrams, I know I'm bringing him up here as a potential GM candidate. Unfortunately, I have a feeling that the Giants ownership probably views him as one because they think he's done a great job for the last 27 years. He's somebody that they're familiar with. He's somebody who has had success in the past. And the Giants love the past. But I'm telling you, it's time to move forward, New York Giants. It's time to look to the future and stop looking at the past. So that's my take on it. Kevin Abrams, instead of looking at him as a GM candidate like the Giants likely do, I'm looking at him as the opposite. I think this is a position where the Giants could desperately use some new blood. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see what the New York Giants decide to do with Joe Schoen. And if they do fire him, of course, analysis will be live here on the channel. We're going to keep updating you guys on any changes that the Giants make in their front office and coaching staff. They did just fire assistant defensive line coach Brian Cox. We'll discuss that a little bit more in a future episode and what that means for the team. But for now, here's some general manager candidates to keep an eye on. Just a preview, plenty more breakdowns and extensive looks at different candidates on the way here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. Listen to Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, I'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go New York Giants.
Perfect.